Hello. Okay, whatever. We're using the bad microphone. We're doing it live. Enjoy the webcam microphone today. I'm not letting this broken microphone be the death of the stream. Jeez, okay. So, we're finally here. We're looking at this mod, but this is not Après, le déluge. When people suggested it, I put it on the vote. I know at the time that there was a successor that's been updating this like very classic Hearts of Iron 4 mod. So is it really that bad? Is it actually a really shit microphone? I might try to switch it over then. But I wanted to shout these guys out because it's really cool that they've been managing to update this mod for the latest version. You can play it, and instead of it being like a really basic focus tree, which is kind of like the original Hoi 4 design of it just being like pick your ideology, there's actually some pretty in-depth ones here, as you can see, very, very wide. They have entire military things here. They have an economic branch that is correlated with your ideology. You have an entire like Africa colonial or just colonial period management here. League of Nations branch. It's all really good stuff. They have every ideology under the sun. Sometimes it makes you wonder if they should even be having every single ideology. Anarcho-egoism is interesting. But I do want to say there's a couple like weird focuses that for their sake they need to consider removing, because it's against terms of service to have focuses that, or like have decisions where you reduce populations. Like it's one thing to have the events happen, you can't control it. They are okay with representing those, I think. But when you have a conscious choice of removing populations from states, and yeah, it's just not good. So I would recommend that they change that. But regardless, there's been there's been some good work done here to preserve the original idea of the mod, and I appreciate that aspect of it. I'm gonna try using my better microphone again. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so what is this mod? What is the point of divergence? How does it work? Honestly, I don't know that much about what exactly this the whole point of this project is. But okay, I tried switching over to my better microphone, so hopefully this is good. But the one thing that I do know, is like very uncontestable, is that it's a Napoleon victory mod. Napoleon, instead of like getting exiled and coming back later in 1848 revolutions, whatever, it's just Napoleon the whole way through, and they dominate the world. But as you can see, the borders here don't make too much sense, right? So you have like a Netherlands that owns Cologne. Bro's quiet. Oh my god. Ah. Hello. I'm like making out with the microphone right now. Is this better? Is it ASMR-y for you? It's just such a disaster of a stream. Oh my god. Okay. But anyway, regardless, Napoleon wins the war, and then is it better now? Okay, it's better now. Napoleon wins all the wars, basically. Like the 1848 revolution still happened, and it causes their empire to like fall apart here. But Poland exists as a really big state, and it's like, why? I don't really understand that. Poland is in a faction with Hungary, and a lot of these things, it's like, oh, what's the lore? This is a really bad lore. But then you have to remember, this is a successor to the first alternate history mod in Hearts of Iron 4 ever. Like, people call this a legendary mod, and it is, and it's an interesting LoreGrave to have, because I can't just like go in there and just gut everything, right? But then at the same time, this mod exists and they have their own thing going on, but they're honoring the original. That's fine. But then my influence as an influencer would be like, okay, well, if I make a video about this, then maybe they would feel influenced to change it. And then it's like, is that a bad thing to do? I don't know for sure. But the one thing I would say is just get rid of some of the focuses that are literally against TOS. But anyway, this is the even worse. You thought Europe was bad. Look at this. Okay. The Kingdom of Louisiana, led by exiled Orleans. They have Saint Dominique. They have Guyana. Empire of Brazil exists in a faction with them, I think. Cordial agreement. Even worse, there's a Hamilton monarchist America, which is crazy. And then there's also Socialist Republic of Quebec. One thing I would say, it wouldn't be called Quebec. Canada was a term that the French used initially, and if it wasn't taken away from them, they would just continue calling it Canada. So Socialist Republic of Canada is more appropriate. While this is a little odd, you can keep the Algonquin Republic. That's cute. Deseret owning Vancouver is crazy. Mormon Vancouver. North America is horrible, yeah. But here's the worst part. And again, this isn't anything bad against either of the people. Like, the standards for Hoi 4 modding and the lore that is required for it significantly expanded. And these people who are honoring the original, they're doing their best to, honor the original. So no shade to them. But at the same time, if we're going to be taking a look at this from a artistic and lore, whatever standpoint, there's a lot of issues here, but a lot of opportunities for us to have a lot of interesting things. So, yeah. So as you can see, there's a lot of like why would this happen? Why the lore is not very coherent, and that's fine. But we're going to make it coherent in my version, right? Again, Après, déluge doesn't need to take any of these ideas, but I want to make a video about it because I'm passionate about this. Okay, so let's just cover some more core aspects of this mod. So here we have French Mandate of Pomerania. I think that this is them trying to like have France have a presence here. Poland and France are enemies. You can tell their ideology. This is monarchist. They are ultra nationalist. They lost the First World War. France and Austria were friends. That's why they have Slovakia here, which is dividing them up. Well, besides this one little turtleneck. They predicted the war. Okay. That's because the socialists that would have been the USSR all exist as separate states here. Poland, for some reason, isn't invading the socialists. Isn't like this whole situation is not very good. There's also a there's also three of these here. 7 years war, France keeps Louisiana. So is that actually what the original point of divergence is? Because that's way too much. Like, take it from the guy who used that as a way to make Project Bourbon. It's not a good basis for a alternate history mod. I wouldn't recommend that at all. So we're going to take it in a different way, take a different approach. And it looks cliche, yes. It's because it was. This is literally the first one. This is like very baby steps for the Hoi 4 modding community. So we need to respect it like you would respect a grandpa. Anyway, but let's stop harping on this. The one thing I will say the last is that there's a three-way civil war in Germany, which I believe was originally just the Confederated States of the Rhine, which then revolted to be like this after the Great War. With the Great War, I think happened in like 10 years before the start date. But yeah, there's no cliche when they made this. Yeah, that's a good point. While there might be some alternate history cliches in the alternate history space or whatever, this was the first Hoi 4 mod that's an alternate history mod. So there's no cliches. Like, they set up the cliches, right? These are the people who made the original. I don't think the Après, nous people are directly descendant from the Après, moi one, but yeah. So I want to quickly just make sure I can set up my my Photoshop maps properly, so I can show everything properly. Just give me a second. Okay, here we go. Where is it? There it is. Okay, so instead of it, like basically, look over here. This is what Napoleon's Europe would look like at 1815, right? This is what I believe the map would look like. Just to quickly cover that. Napoleon would have controlled this if Britain was not involved in the separatist states anymore. There wouldn't be a Spain that was actively hostile to Napoleon. Portugal would exist too. They'd still have dominion over Italy. These annexations of like Italian and Austrian land would persist because, yeah, it's unrealistic that 1812 or whatever, Napoleon marches all the way to Moscow, doesn't get a peace treaty, and then runs back. We need to eliminate the British support of Russia to demoralize them to the point where they feel like they can't win anymore. Or just have Napoleon make a slightly different decision, maybe go through the Baltic, take St. Petersburg. These little things here, it's not very much like solidified, and I'm not gonna try to make it the best lore imaginable, given the fact that we're kind of honoring the original by not being too strict with the way that we represent things anyway. So I'm not really that worried. But the interesting things here is that Prussia still exists. Napoleon controls Danzig. They're still gimped or whatever. Austria still doesn't have a lot of land. The Duchy of Warsaw, I want to have them become the PLC again, just because it makes sense in the sense that if France is trying to set up a buffer state between Russia and the not really actual allies of Prussia and Austria, they need to have a big state here. This is also why, from I guess a reasonable standpoint, he wanted these people to be his friends, and also to have Danzig. He needed Baltic ports to be able to supply this, right? It's not that unreasonable, even from if you were in the situation, what would you do standpoint, that yeah, you would want to have, why else would he set up a Duchy of Warsaw? Why else would he put the dynasty of the former kings of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth? Why else would he do that, right? He wanted to do this, I believe, and this is a reasonable assumption anyway. This green thing here, I don't know what to do with. I think that I'm going to have it be PLC. There's a little map error in that way when we get to the later years. But regardless, don't worry about the layer names. Anyway, here we have the filters here that I wanted to do. I highlighted the allies that aren't really wanting to be allies in a different color. these people are all like these people are satellite states of Russia. I mean, satellite states of France. We have like a interesting Portugal here. We have Naples. Sicily would still exist. It would be the Bourbon exiles would be staying in Sicily. There's no reason for them to not be. It's not depicted here, but Britain would still have Gibraltar, I think. And yeah, when it comes to keeping the Bourbon exiles, I have an idea for how we can represent that, but the way that we're going to need to get there is it has to have a way more coherent point of divergence. Okay, so this is what I came up with. The point of divergence is not really what you would expect. Washington dies before the Constitutional Convention happens. Why is this the point of divergence? First of all, it's a pretty like long like distance away from the Napoleonic era, right? But when I looked at the Hearts of Iron floor map and I saw a monarchy America under Hamilton, it was like, okay, wait, no, there's an idea here. And if you guys are fans of Possible History, he had a video where he invited me and Rewriting History to do alternate histories on the American states if the Constitutional Convention had failed. And I took the interesting approach of having Hamilton and his outspoken ideas about like having a more oligarchic republic and authoritarian republic become the basis for the USA. So it's not to say that I think that Hamilton was right. I think that the fundamental idea of having a lot of liberty and having more Republican traditions or whatever, of actually being able to elect your leaders instead of there deliberately being established a elite class of aristocrats to model after the British Empire is not a good idea. However, this is what I have in mind. So Hamilton would end up leading the USA. He puts down Southern States rebellions. So like there's two different ideas for how the Constitution should be made. But then there was a compromise between two different plans that led to the the separate structure of the U.S. Constitution. I don't remember all the specifics. I'm sure that the American people who have been educated in this know what I'm talking about. But Hamilton had an idea. He proposed it in the Constitutional Convention, and people think that he was just being an outspoken guy to show how bad it could be if they didn't take the original compromise. Like, they finally did the compromise, and then they formed the USA. They had the federal government. If it weren't for that, they'd all still be separate states. But in a second Constitutional Convention, after Hamilton puts down Shea rebellions that spread all over New England, he gets local allies. He manages to pass it, but then people who would be more states' rights and it not just be about slavery, but actual like state right people would revolt. He would suppress it, and then he would be chilling out here. But when eventually, like, it's like, oh well, Hamilton was a big fan of Britain, right? Why would he ever go to war with Hamilton? I think that the point is that like Hamilton wanted to have a strong state that could be independent from Britain. We could still emulate Britain's sphere, and in ways they would be trading a lot with each other. But when Napoleon goes around, or like the French Revolution happens and starts fucking with the world, it's like, oh, just another example of bad mob rule, Hamilton says. But then Napoleon becomes first consul and has a constitution that's kind of basically the same thing as Hamilton's, where it's like he's president for life and whatever. Like, it's like, oh, well, maybe we have more in common. So he trades with Napoleon, but then Napoleon does his continental system, which blocks trade with Britain. So it's like, oh, well, I can't do that, but I still need to trade with other people, though. So they want to trade with both people. Britain would then be like, don't trade with these guys. We'll steal the people off of your ships. This is something that happened in our timeline, which is one of the reasons why the War of 1812 happened. When American shipping would go to Europe, Britain would intercept them, take all the cargo, and then take the people and quote-unquote impress them and force them to work in British boats, and some of them never came back home. Terrible. This upset America. This then led them to go to war in the War of 1812. But with the War of 1812, it's like America won. Okay, well, like it's a controversial statement. If literal Washington D.C. burned down, and you still think it's a victory, I don't know. But regardless,
because of the fact that the British, there's many factors, but in this timeline, we're going to take the assumption that because the American army was militia-based, because they didn't want it to have too much of a central authority or whatever, when the British came in, they were unable to do a prolonged resistance. Britain then just kind of let them exist. It's like, hey, fine, we won't support this Tecumseh's Confederacy here, and as long as you respect Canada, fine. Normalization of relations happened later. The U.S. was not involved in the World War, in Napoleon's wars, right? So then, in this timeline, if Hamilton has a standing army and navy and isn't like worried too much about like democratic values or whatever the initial founding fathers had wanted, the War of 1812 would be actually way closer. And it's not to say that necessarily we need the USA to take Canada. It could be that they don't take any land at all. But if Britain was fighting, my theory is, or the assumption that we're taking for this timeline, if Britain was fighting America and they were too stubborn to let go of all their North American territories and wanted to keep fighting, and because the Americans had a solid army, they would be able to fight over it more, and then that would cause Britain to be like, not only are they like running credit supporting all these anti-Napoleon things, if they had like their colonial empire at risk, that's bad. They would divert more resources here. Those resources wouldn't be applied toward Napoleon. Therefore, Napoleon would be able to get Russia out of the war before it can turn into the Sixth Coalition War, where Austria and Prussia and Sweden and everyone else starts to fight Napoleon. Instead, Napoleon is able to eventually get the Russians to agree to a peace where they basically reverse the third partition of Poland. So it's only the second partition, which is close to these borders. It's those borders. But I would say that Poland would have this too, because then Napoleon can fortify the river, and then this is like the new boundary of Europe and Eurasia. Okay. And by the way, I saw a couple of people in chat asking about Louisiana. I still think that Napoleon would sell Louisiana to America, right? So again, this isn't necessarily to say that this will be how it ends up, but I'm going to take the assumption that we are going to have a USA that controls all this stuff. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of coffee. I'm going to read chat for a bit. Aaron Burr's conspiracy. You're right. That's a good idea. I don't know too much about Aaron Burr's conspiracy, but I am going to note that down because that is something that would have more precedent if Hamilton is acting like a imperial dictator. So, Aaron Burr, Louisiana Empire scheme. There is an opportunity here too where if we have Hamilton America fighting the British, and then the British end up beating Hamilton, maybe one of the things that they say to do is, hey, give Louisiana back to the exiled monarchy. And then you just have a British ally of the exiled Louisianans. And there you go, right? We could do that there too. But I do like having a big USA with like a more monarchist statement because there's interesting things. The French Illyrian province, yeah, we're gonna get to that. It's early Hoi 4 mods, the only thing in workshop. Yeah, I only got into alternate history in Hoi 4 by the time Kaiser came out, so it's interesting to see things like this happen. Franco-American split. Well, technically they would have never been allies, just indirect allies. But yeah, we're gonna just take the assumption that the USA under Hamilton exists, and it's not a monarchist Hamilton America yet. It would still be like first consul, like perpetual leadership. If there's an election, that it would happen after he died, and it would likely go to his son. Maybe, let's just say it does, and that causes a precedent of an imperial presidency and like the illusion of a democratic system. That's what we're going with for America right now. But why would the U.S. invade Canada just to give up Louisiana? if they invaded Canada and then the British beat them into submission, they would be subject to peace treaty terms that would remove their, like, why does anybody go to war, Tetra? I don't know, man. That's just the way that it works sometimes. Like, you risk losing territory if you go to war. Okay, so let's get to the next stage. So Napoleon rules over Europe. He pieces out with Russia in, let's say, 1815. He's old, he's tired, he lost a lot of his elite troops to attrition in Russia. He just doesn't have the energy to do any more fighting, and if he did, it would cause potentially Austria and Prussia to break off. So instead, he just chills out. He's like, okay, I'm not going to conquer anymore, because if he went and tried to conquer again, there'd be a sixth coalition. Russia would be joining in. Maybe the Ottomans even are involved. If like France is trying to do something here, then the whole thing collapses again. It defeats the point of what we're going for. He would eventually die. His son, Napoleon II, King of Rome, descendant from the Habsburgs, would come to power. It would cause Austria and them to be friendly. I don't know about the Illyrian province yet. Maybe they sell it then, or like give it back then. I don't know, but I do have an idea for how we can do this. What do we got here? So beats Russia, expands Russia, can't do any offensive war, no military. Takes the role of Austria in the post-Napoleon War of our timeline. So you know how like there's the concert of Europe, and Metternich was enforcing conservative ideas on everybody. Imagine that Napoleon's dynasty is enforcing like French dominion over the world, and nobody's allowed to contest them. That's kind of the more interesting dynamic. So when we have the 1848 revolutions, I don't know if it'll happen in literally 1848, but I think that Napoleon II should be assassinated. Why? Well, first, it immediately ends the potential of having a big line of fictional Napoleons that we can't justify the existence of. It's dramatic enough for it to consider everybody else that is anti-Napoleon to start acting, because they perceive the state as weak. So okay, well, let's go in on the French now. Everybody revolt now. Then the person who became Napoleon III, who's like a branch of the Napoleon dynasty in the Netherlands, ends up becoming the emperor. So we have Napoleon III of our timeline being the Napoleon III of this timeline. It just makes things cleaner in that way. So what we're gonna have like revolts everywhere. So it has Napoleon assassinated by liberals or anarchists, I don't know yet. The Confederation of the Rhine would immediately elect like Prussia to become their king. And you know how there was that infamous line of like, I refuse to accept a crown from the gutter? Well, that's because the 1848 revolutionary coup or whatever is by liberal peasants who wanted Germany. But imagine it was all the successors of the Holy Roman Empire forced into this a confederation they didn't want to be a part of. They just take it over, like, you know what, fuck it, we don't want to be a part of France anymore. France isn't our protector anymore, Prussia is. Okay, then the Prussian king takes the throne of the Kaiser of Germany. Oh shit. Now we have a big Germany here. They're claiming the Rhineland. Oh god. The Spanish Bourbons in exile here are up in arms here again. The Portuguese puppet monarchy wants to have the exiled Brazilians back. Austria is trying to get their lands back here. And Russia is going in on our PLC puppet. Oh no. Oh god. What do we do? What they do is they withdraw from Italy, they withdraw from Spain, they withdraw from Portugal. Like that, like there's just no way that they can hold on to everything. They give all the old territories of the Illyrian province back to the Austrians. They promise that Austria will get their lands they took from them, gave to Bavaria in the Confederation of the Rhine, back if they are friends with France and they help put down the Prussians. Great, we'll do that. They work together. There's also the Hungarian monarchy. We're going to talk about that later. There's a problem with the timeline currently. Right now, they're depicted as still being a part of Austria. It's very likely that they would have failed in the revolution, but we'll get there when we get there. Okay? So, France then still controls here because they basically tell the Bourbons, hey, you can come back, but I'm keeping Balearics. I'm keeping this. Just promise me they're not going to screw me over. Okay, fine. They're not allies, but they have like a non-aggression pact. Maybe that will go away eventually. They would draw from the Dutch too. Maybe it's just a republic. They're like, fine, whatever. You can be here again. Britain, I think it might be fun to have them have a Chartist revolution, but then again, like we need like a naval counterbalance to France for this timeline to work. But then again, do we could just have the British colonial empire falling apart, and then it could be really interesting to see France take the part of the naval power. Maybe the Hamiltonian Americans are more privy to imperialism, so they actually take some British colonies in the area and repurpose them. Regardless, the Napoleonic order has relatively fractured. There's no longer French dominion over everything. Even the PLC at this point may not be friends with France. They would need to be for Russia to exactly like exist here and fight. Like there's no way that Poland on its own would be able to fight against Russia. And like, why isn't Russia invading when the Napoleonic order is weak? It could be that in this case, we have Austria then falling to revolutions. The Hungarians are independent. The Galicia-Lodomeria becomes a part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. But France tolerates this with Hungary and Poland. It's like, but we need to put down Germany because we don't want to unify Germany again. That might work out for them. Then we have an Austria here that exists. But with this current way that it's mapped out, the PLC doesn't have control over Galicia yet. Hungary is still part of the of an early Austria-Hungary that doesn't have any collapsing whatever here. They have autonomy. It's an Austro-Hungarian monarchy. Maybe it's even a triple monarchy with a Galicia-Lodomeran crown. Regardless, when the Confederation of the Rhine is destroyed and Prussia is still allowed to exist, the way that the French and the Prussians come to an agreement on how to proceed from here is that France does not have any influence over these states anymore. The German Confederation follows the border of the Rhine and has Prussia in it, but also all the German Austrian provinces. And the reason why is that if France is like, okay, German Confederation, you're just these states, what's stopping them from immediately crowning the Prussians again, right? If you add the Austrian German territories to the German Confederation, then you have two powers in the German Confederation fighting for influence. This is the exact Congress of Europe solution that Metternich had proposed, and it worked to prevent a unified Germany after Napoleon. But so instead, this is existing here, and it's a little delayed. But obviously, this division of power isn't going to last. You have Spain who wants Catalonia, Italy who wants Piedmont and Corsica. I don't know if Sardinia would even still exist as Sardinia. I don't even know if Sicily would still exist as Sicily. But all these states exist, and it's not a very good outcome. There's still going to be war. There's still going to be a division, like the Balkans are still going to rise up in the Ottoman Empire. Then all those different Balkan states are going to want to have their claims respected. Who's allied with who and why? These questions haven't been solidified yet. But this is the really rough World War I situation that I have mapped out currently. So blue is obviously pro-Napoleon. Red is anti-Napoleon. Hungary and Poland would have gone against this order here because reasons. Probably if Austria still had Galicia-Lodomeria, Poland would want it. If Hungary was still a part of Austria, they would want to be not a part of it. Prussia would work with Poland because they want to have Germany. This is a little weird here because why would Prussia and Poland work together? Well, for the exact geopolitical scenario here, if they were fighting each other, then they would both die, and then Napoleon would just come in and fuck with everything, which eventually does happen. And we'll end up with a similar situation to the 1936 scenario in the Après, déluge, where we'll have Poland, Lithuania deploying a communist in Russia to have them fall apart into civil war. The PLC would expand to like regain its old territories. Let's see if I can find a map of a big PLC. So this is a partition one, 1600. Yeah, so the PLC would annex territories along these lines, prop up separatist states, maybe a Cossack state here, do the whole Promethean thing of trying to avoid Russia from being powerful again. That's the Brest-Litovsk of this timeline. And overall it would be a good thing for Poland, but then because of the fact that France needs to win in this war, they would win, right? They would defeat Germany, they would defeat Poland, Austria would get land back, and we would end up with a similar situation to the way that it's currently mapped. So let's look at this whole here. Confederation Rhine is Prussia, France draws from Italy, Hungary declares the local parliament, Prussia still exists, Confederation Rhine, yeah. So I'm going to quickly show the Hoi 4 mod, Après, nous, déluge again, just to get some, just to, hold on. Just to get the whole mapping thing situated, because I don't have it currently mapped out. Annex DDR, annex Ger. So this is sort of what the old war, the new order would look like. And I'm also going to tag to France. Annex. Oops. Annex Bell. So they would own like up to here, but just for the sake of mapping things out, France keeps all of the territories that other people try to take it from them. I don't know if the Kingdom of Spain would be a part of Napoleon's order. Kingdom of Italy would be upset. They would have lost territory because the way that I had it mapped before was, if I just go back to this, not that one. If I go back to the Photoshop scene, you can see here that Italy would have had these northern parts of Austria, but then in the Hoi 4 mod here, you'd have it where they lost this territory, so Austria got territory off of Italy. They'd be upset. I don't know if they'd have these things. They would go ultra-nationalist potentially, or you could even have it where Naples exists in the south, and then in the north, it's something else. I'm not too sure yet, but regardless, the people who would be anti-France would be Spain and Italy, just like before. The Austrians may have annexed Silesia off of the Prussians. I'm not, hold on. I don't have a tool pack, I don't even know how to use it. So I'm going to, so Austria would kind of look like this, I think. Prussia would like cease to exist. And we may even have a French mandate of this region again. So it's like, this is the Confederation of the Rhine again. Fuck you. This is my puppet state that's going to make sure that Poland stays in line. Poland may not even have Galicia Lodomeria. It would be back to Austria. Hungary would still exist for reasons, and they would be geopolitically isolated between each other, of Poland and Hungary, so that they don't have the ability to contest Napoleon's world order again. So that's the theory behind the way that the peace deal would work. The Russia wouldn't be Russian Empire. It wouldn't have these states here that are communist. If anything, the PLC is fractured so that this territory, maybe not this territory, but this region, which is Ukrainian, this region which is Belarusian, these become whole states again, and Poland is just Poland. Wow, what a terrible outcome, right? But then Poland, select a state and then type set owner tag. Thank you, Cosmosin. I'll do that right now. So hold on. Select a state and then type set owner UKR. Okay, there we go. Great. That's really easy. Set owner BLR. Oops. Almost knocked over. I knocked over my coffee mug. If there's any in there, it would be awful. So I don't know about this entirely yet, so don't sue me. Set owner palm. The way that things would work out could even look like this. So hold on. Tag poll. Occupied territories, but it's not really Lisa's puppet. Tag lith. Set owner lit. Set owner lit. Set owner lit. And set owner lit. So it could potentially look like this. Maybe I'll even do this too. Hold on. So set owner AUS. Set owner AUS. Maybe this region is a contested region between Austria and France. France would have the Ukrainians as like a big state here, where they are the buffer state to the Russians. Hold on, why do they not have cores here? Wah wah. What is this? Is this Russian propaganda? Oh no! You copyrighted music. Nobody listen to that music. It's copyrighted. We don't want to get demonetized. So it would look maybe something like this. Maybe Crimea is a French mandate. Maybe in order to have this even work, we would need to make sure that whoever owns the Straits of the Bosphorus is French aligned, so you could have Greece controlling this stuff. It's like, oh, what a terrible, poor Poland. Yeah, this is maybe too much territory lost from Poland, right? So maybe in that way we'd still have this territory, because we need Poland to be the disturber of the order of the world, right? We need them to be able to fight and disrupt the French order in this timeline, right? So then you have Austria, who like exists. Like you could have Austria, maybe Austria just collapses too, and it's just like, you know what, Austria can't exist. But then it would be a part of the German Confederation. So then what's going to happen there instead? Is it Czechoslovakia going to take the place of the Austrians? Because it kind of had that same boundary, and regardless, hold on, a better idea for the Great War. What if no one won? Maybe. I'll consider it, because this is a little too much. I agree. Poland turning on France and timeline set to be this powerful state created by Napoleon to have almost all of its lands. Yeah, but then the problem is that we have to, like, in my mind, I feel like I need to respect the core of having Poland be the SHIT disturber who fights with everybody, right? Murat could make a dynasty in Italy. For that reason alone, there should be a republic in Italy, and then France could reinstall Murat, maybe. Yeah, this is kind of where I'm at when it comes to the timeline development. There's problems here where, like, obviously Austria's too big. There isn't too much of a balance of power, and so on and so forth. I still think that the Confederation of the Rhine would still fall apart. I think that would be a good way to have the world order be disrupted. Having a situation where Poland is denied their nationhood and then having them be dominated by a national, like a very big nationalist like Pilsudski, all this stuff would be a good way to have a war here. The Russian Federative Socialist Soviet Republic would fight these states and then divide Poland, just like Molotov-Ribbentrop. Poland could then even claim Silesia and other could be pan-Slavic. So then you have this region. You could have like a Sorbia zone here. I don't know about that. It's a little controversial. Have Hungary then also be a part of it. Maybe they partition this stuff up here. I'm not too certain about this stuff. Have Poland keep Krakow. Doesn't want minorities in the nation. So then I guess like, yeah, if Austria is like more German focused, you have Poland here, and then Ukraine could have this stuff, and then that's the reason why Poland and Ukraine want to fight. I think that makes sense. Stab in the back myth. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what would happen. We'll do this. That looks better. Still not great, but it's better. France have everything. The only thing that avoid having this big civil war in France. And why does it sound familiar? Like you've done something like this. I don't know. Having a French civil war might be a little much. I think that it would make sense for them to have problems in their new puppet states, like Spain, Spanish Civil War, and then having a civil war here also makes sense. Austro-Slovakia, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is a little odd. Let me finish this. Maybe I should just do all of my my mapping streams in Hoi 4. I'm not used to this. So then France has a puppet state here. I'm pretty sure there was actually something where there was a suggested Napoleonia, like the Ukraine existed and they were like, hey, this is a separate ethnic group. What if we liberated them and then made them all Napoleon? Like there's like an actual movement for Ukraine to be named after Napoleon. Colin de France, it tickles me. Yeah, now that I know how to do this. Yeah, I'm fixing this. Wish I could select multiple states like you can in EU4. No. There. Yay! Okay, we got an actual French Empire here. Right. Yeah, so we have this French order here. This is a little much, though, right? There's too much going on here. Too much in favor of France. Yeah, for that reason alone, we should consider taking it down a notch. Potentially, France doesn't have this mandate situation here. Maybe Prussia exists, but it's different. Yeah, Duchy of Amsterdam. Yeah. Poland could still go Kingly Prussia east of Vistula. If you go with the local nobles preferring to stay in the PLC and managing to resist Frederick the Great. I mean, this Prussia? Yeah, but like it's all Germans there. Like for some reason Poland has full cores in this. I don't understand why. It would make sense for them to have a Baltic port, so maybe they'll have this state. Not too sure about that yet though. France keeps Stettin or Königsberg since they big parts. Yeah. They want Baltic presence, so they would do that. Ukraine might be called Ruthenia, showing Catholic and land dominant. Yeah, sure. Yeah, Ruthenia could exist here then. Belarus would also exist here too. Could be that because of how long Poland existed, they aren't able to control as much of their land here. I don't know. This might be like just for the sake of having an idea. Yeah, you know what? Let's. So it's like kind of like this, maybe. I think maybe this is a little bit more fair of a division of power of Poland, which then wants to take over all the lands that were formerly PLC, maybe even integrate Slavic territories in Czechoslovakia, Zapadoslavia sort of thing. would be working with Vilnius not being Lithuanian. Oh yeah, look at that. For some reason the states are really large. Like it doesn't matter. Poland-Ukraine border could be different. Maybe Bartholomew line. I think I know what you mean. I don't know off the top of my head what the Bartholomew line is, but this could be good to do. I got 7 messages on my Discord. None of them are something I need to worry about right now. Yeah, so that's basically what I got. I see people talking about what they would do in their timelines. I want to go back to Photoshop because I had a list of things I wanted to do. So I want to hide the lore. I want to put the problems and ideas. So I've covered most of these problems already. If Poland and Hungary are supposed to be independent before World War I, how would this timeline work? Because if we need them to be resisting against French order, like it would make sense for Austria to collapse, for Poland to get this territory, Hungary to get this territory, and then they're working together. And then it justifies like why are Poland and Hungary against France? Because they're allies with Austria. Austria wants to reconquer their territories. That's why in World War I they would be fighting. So maybe in that way, the 1848 revolutions has to have them both be independent, just so that World War I has a reason to happen for a revanchist perspective of Austria-Hungary, right? If Austria is under the Habsburgs and it takes them like 30, 40 years to reconquer territories, and it might only just be Slovakia, just like they depict in Après, nous, le déluge, then it would makes more sense because of how long Hungary and Poland were independent, right? Raise my microphone. Oh yeah, sorry. I decided to lean back and try to relax instead of yelling into my microphone really close like this. It's the way it is. Gotta get that good audio quality. But so maybe I'll change it so that this stuff falls to 1848. If Hungary became independent, Poland got Galicia, why would France tolerate that? Why wouldn't Austria follow the pan-German sentiments? I don't really know. That's a good counterpoint. Maybe France is just here and then they enforce Habsburgs to exist separately. The German Confederation exists. The Austrian people who are ruling here want to reconquer this. They don't want to be part of Germany, which actually was already Austrian foreign policy back then, but that's when they controlled all that multi-ethnic territory. If they didn't have any of that, then why would they do that? But they do have that in Bohemia. So maybe it's like a Austria-Bohemia. I don't know. A British socialist revolution via the Chartists sounds fun, but then what happens to the colonial empire? We might need Britain to stay around, or would, if Britain fell to this, would France just take the place of the colonial benefactor of all these people? That could work. Hold on, I'm asking all these questions. I'm not looking at chat. And how do I make in Photoshop? I will make a video. I want to make a video about that soon. Could use the wrong name. Modern day Kaliningrad used to be called Royal Prussia, and Poznan territory used to be called Prince of Prussia. Interesting. French colonies should be the Dakar to Djibouti. Maybe Boer states are larger. Pink map Poland. Pink map Poland? Poland has the pink map? I think you mean Portugal. Yeah, Portugal would have it. But here's another thing I kind of didn't cover. If it takes until 1848 for the the Portuguese monarchy that was exiled in Brazil to be restored in Portugal, I don't think there'd be a separation of the Brazilian and Portuguese empires. So we'd have a Brazilian Portuguese empire. It would be like power would just be in Rio de Janeiro. Portugal would be overseas at that point. But then, yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing that is happening. It could be a good Atlantic power. But what else do we got here? Maybe give Austria, Croatia, Dalmatia to power up Austria so they're actually a threat. Yeah, maybe. Free Hungary, 1848. North German Confederation Republic. Yeah, South German Monarchist Confederation. Sure. Austria having Slovakia would only delay Hungary ganging up on them and effectively disobeying France at the minimum. Yeah, I think that the idea is just to have a natural defensive area to buffer them. So I think I would be keeping that. What happened to the chat here? Poland is map most similar to Intermarium in Talons of Twilight. Yeah, I'm a one-trick pony. Basically, the idea. Hold on. Could Austria in this timeline become a union of Austrians and Czechs? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Russia and America would have been survived to the start date, so they might need to be axed. We could always do the meme of having the Tsarists in exile in Alaska. The United States grew this fast and early under Hamilton. Maybe the United Kingdom would support the Mexican Empire to avoid a too powerful USA allied into France. Yeah, so we could have a big Mexico as a counterbalance to America. That could be fun. Wouldn't Portugal and Spain be united against a Brazil that wants Portugal back? So, hold on. If this is a satellite Napoleonic Portugal with no legitimacy, and this is a satellite Spain with the Napoleon as king that has no legitimacy, and then legitimist elements in these territories are successful, then they would be working together. And Napoleon, like in 1848, Napoleon wouldn't be able to hold on to this. So I'm sticking by this lore. Is it Kingdom of Louisiana? How would that work with the Spanish versus U.S.? So one of the ideas I had is that instead of having the USA be winning everything in the 1812 war, you could have the British defeating Hamilton's America, and then they put the Orleans in Louisiana, and then you have a exiled Louisianan kingdom that survives until 1936. Like the surviving until 1936 thing is a little bit of a stretch, but there's another idea somebody had about our timeline real conspiracy to have somebody coup Louisiana to try to take it over and become an emperor himself. Could have something similar happen here. Bolsheviks in exile in Alaska could be fun. Would there be an American CV in this timeline? I don't know what you mean by CV. Portugal even exists. There's a plan to divide it into 3. Yeah, I remember that, but I think that they would still exist. How would Spain and Portugal, who were in Napoleonic wars, my assumption was Prussia was divided severely even in 7 Years' War. Yeah, they would be fighting against them, but then they would have like there would be some sort of agreement where it's like, look, we'll let you come back peacefully as long as you don't fight us when we're trying to put down Germany, right? It sets up the things for World War I. It kind of needs to be that way. Issue with the big Mexico would be too weak politically to serve as an effective buffer. Yeah, it wouldn't prevent them from trying, but then it would fall. But then how would it fall, right? It could be fun to have France come in and put a Habsburg on the Spanish throne again. So then you have a you have a front line in the World War where maybe the USA isn't pro-Napoleon, Mexico's pro-Napoleon, and they're trying to reconquer American territory. That could be fun. South American can finally go different. Yeah, for sure. We need a strong British Empire. Yeah, I think so, because there isn't any like real other people that could take it besides the world not being imperialized by Europeans. But that's, I feel like that's too much of a divergence from our history to make an effective timeline out of. Maybe USA only purchases North Louisiana. No. The entire point of France's sale of Louisiana is that they didn't want to have to deal with any American engagements. By giving it to a neutral power, they were preventing it falling into those hands, and Napoleon wouldn't make a decision like that. Exile Louisiana would hold anything outside the modern state of Louisiana. Yeah, 30 Texas situations. Yeah, exactly, right? There's just so many reasons why Exile Louisiana doesn't happen. And it's unfortunate because it's like a core aspect of the original mod. But everything else that needs to happen in Europe for it to be the situation that people like, it just doesn't make sense for there to be a big Louisiana like that. And even if it was all that territory, is there really any industrial resources there that would cause the Kingdom of Louisiana to even be an effective power in the Second World War? What were they doing in the First World War? Like, there's just so many things that are a problem. Without any Chinese exclusion acts in Western North America, we see a California with a sizable or even majority Chinese Asian population. I think that for that reason, like the exclusion acts would, the entire reason why Chinese exclusion acts happened in coastal territories is exactly for that reason. Mexicans would still do that to them. It wouldn't be like it wasn't just like a British Anglo thing. Like, I'm certain that this would have been a thing for many people. But I would like to see how the ethnic situation in the Pacific changes. It could be fun to have Chinese majority areas there. So I'm not against it, but at the same time, like, I don't see how that would not happen in the same way. Exiled French Kingdom should be in Quebec. I don't know, man. I just don't think that an exiled bourbon in America can happen. But I wonder what the Cape Colony is doing here, because the British took it from the Dutch. Yeah, and they would have no reason to give it back, right? They gave back Indonesia to the Dutch, but they wouldn't be able to give it back to the Dutch. So the British should be holding on to a lot of stuff. It could be overextended. Chartist rebellion could happen. Everything could fall apart there. France would be the only major industrial European power that would be able to gobble up the colonies. France would be maybe way too powerful for that reason. Are we going to keep the Mormon Kingdom stuff? Maybe, but not to the extent that it's depicted. They would still be exiled. They would still settle in Utah. They would still... Mexico's weak, so they would still fragment. I don't know if it would take the entire region there, though. Bourbon Cuba. Just put the bourbons everywhere. Bourbon Cuba, though. No, that might actually still happen. Like the Spanish... Yeah, no. Bourbons... The Spanish would control Cuba. In fact, I want to put that down. Because right now I'm just talking to chat. So make sure you select it. There. So they control Cuba, and they'll also control the Philippines. These places would still exist, even if they defected away from the British sphere of influence. But this makes for an interesting scenario then, because if Spain is fighting Napoleon in the First World War, we want Napoleon to win the First World War. Japan could take the Philippines. They would have the method, they would have the industry and the motivation and the impetus to just take over the Philippines after World War I. So that's pretty cool. But then what's going to happen with Japan, Philippines, like they're just the Pacific power, and then they go in further into Indonesia and stuff. Like big maritime Japan is cool, and we want to have that. So yes, the Bourbons would still control this territory, and I have Spanish Puerto Rico. Thank you. They would control this territory. The Americans likely wouldn't be able to contest this. Could be fun. Having a USA that deliberately doesn't reach the Pacific to cause different things to happen in the Pacific could be good, but then how about stopping Japan from being imperialized? This is where things get hard, and this is why I like to work on mods that don't have like more than 30 years of divergence to try to figure out, because of how much the rest of the world is impacted by this. The Philippines had enough internal divisions to divide it into smaller puppets, yes. We have a lot of options: Bourbon Louisiana, Bourbon Cuba, Bourbon Quebec, and even Bourbon Mexico. So if you guys are talking about Louisiana, that's Orleanists. Those aren't bourbons, I'm pretty sure. I saw a message and it got immediately removed. It's interesting. Pre-World War I divergence points in World War II setting. Maybe it's better to lean on the unrealistic nature of having compass journey. Yeah, I should, but I'm too you know what, to allow myself to do that. But you can also leave it open-ended for other people to figure out. Like, I just want to work on this, and this terra incognita is probably one of the best things that I've ever thought of when it comes to doing LoreGraves. I don't need to make everything else in the world make sense. I can just do whatever I want. Yeah, but let's talk about what else is going here. Why does the USA... What does the new USA states look like and why? Do they manifest destiny in Mexico? Probably not. What's the leadership situation like? I think it would be like an imperial presidency under Hamilton. What's happening in Asia? Yeah, Spain keeps Philippines. Japan goes to war and annexes them, poised to take over French colonies. So they'd make a bunch of different puppets. They would separate them along whatever lines they want to. They would not call it the Philippines because it's named after a Spanish king. During World War One, though, yeah, Poland deploys Lenin. Post-World War I, Austrian Empire semi-restored, takes Slovakia, divide Poland, Hungary. Maybe also takes Galicia, Maria back. I don't think I'm going to do that. Austro-Czech Empire makes a little more sense. Soviet-Polish War partition, Ukraine, Belarus, Molotov-Ribbentrop style. Yep. Confederation of the Rhine Civil War still around because it's iconic. Yes. Hamilton, America. So here's what I'm thinking. Regardless of if we have a USA that is big or small, I think that a really good Spanish Civil War analog that also function as a ideological influence war would be to have the fifth Hamilton imperial president just crown himself an emperor like the Napoleonic one, and that would make the ideology of America monarchist, the Napoleon ideology. But then you would have people like Smedley Butler, who would be against dictatorships and whatever, form a second continental army to make America socialist. And then that would be the main conflict between these two, the two factions there. But then that's when you could have Louisiana showing up and being like, "Hey, I'm the Orleanists in exile, and I'm totally going to take this big swath of territory without any resources and reconquer France." Wow. Or Kingfish, yeah, it could be Huey Long, and then he just invites Orleans. So the two kings. Well, Ottomans collapsed during World War One. Good question. If I think that the Balkans would definitely not have any Ottoman stuff. I think that, well, I don't know if France would conquer Algeria. I think that was I think that the conquest of Algeria was something that needed to be done for it was like a French king's way to try to get legitimacy back when everybody was used to Napoleon conquering things. So he tried to conquer Algeria. I don't think that France would conquer Algeria, but maybe they would because it's right there. I don't know. But regardless, the Ottoman collapse. I don't know. Like, it might be more interesting to have the Ottomans around. In fact, that's exactly what they did here, where the Ottomans exist here. But I don't know what's happening in Egypt. I know that the French Empire controls all this, but it doesn't make much sense to me. Napoleon III was weirdly interested in Algeria. Yeah. Maybe have French Empire be like Germany and TNL with the dominant in the collapse. Yeah, like that is a good way to do it. Like, just make them have a civil war. I tend to try to avoid that, but I think that it's the most reasonable thing in this case, that they kind of need to have a civil war. Napoleon and the Ottomans had an unofficial non-aggression pact. Yeah, so the way that the world would work in 1815 is that, like, France going in on the Ottomans is a terrible idea because then everyone else is going to fight against them. The Ottomans are a good rival to Russia. They will never get along. So if you keep Ottomans strong, then they'll be able to contain Russia, right? Could even be that the Ottomans are involved in the 1848 wars, and it's one of the reasons why that the Russians aren't able to make way into here. But at the same time, the Ottomans would eventually collapse in the way that they wouldn't be able to hold on to their Balkan territories. So then you have eventually the Balkans leaving. But yeah, Napoleon would have wanted to have a strong Ottoman Empire, and maybe that policy continues on until World War I, 1936. When it comes to what happened in Egypt, I really don't know. Orleanists in Quebec makes more sense than Louisiana. Yeah, it does, because there's actually French people there who would be more loyal to the French. So maybe it could even be that like the Orleanists are just hanging out in Canada and they've been there for a while, and then when the Civil War happens, they take over Canada, and that's where they are. And then maybe they can claim Louisiana. Maybe they can become the Empire of New France. Maybe, like just a separate faction of the American Civil War. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The big Eiffel Tower, New Paris. Can I build the big Eiffel Tower in New Paris? Yeah. What if Algeria ends up a protectorate like Morocco? Yes. That was, I think, what Napoleon III's idea was for Algeria too. And it would be used to make like a Maghrebi protectorate, not just Algerian. And that's what they'd use to claim everything else. I don't think that France has the capacity to settle Algeria, but then again, like, where would they put their superfluous population? Because they're authoritarian monarchists focused on ethnicity. They would be putting them in Rhineland, but then where did the Rhinish Germans go? I think that the French kind of need a African colony to send a bunch of people to, but where would they be? I don't know. Scenarios butterfly effect is so big it's going to be an aneurysm. Yeah, that's the worst part about my channel, is that when I do timelines like this, I get aneurysms myself. Like, I was trying to grasp this timeline, and I literally, like, disassociated from my body for a good 2 minutes, and I had to, like, come back. Like, what? It was really jarring. Spent half the year trying to create a pseudo-realistic post-Napoleon map in Age History 2 for now. This is going to be similar to that. Interesting. Yeah, it's cool. French Guiana was occupied during the Napoleonic Wars. Maybe annex the region. Planning contention, the French in 1887 and 1982. Yes. German Algeria might be funny. Vandal Kingdom, yeah. Now I want to make a Crusader Kings 3 campaign about that. But I don't know if they would send them to Algeria. They would probably send them, like, I don't know if, like, somebody was mentioning that this is a problem. Maybe they send them there. I don't know. Egypt under the Muhammad Ali could become the Japan of the Middle East. I like things like that, but France was a main benefactor of Muhammad Ali, but that was because they were working against the Ottomans, I think. So, but they wouldn't do that if it was Napoleon. So then, who's being the beneficiary? Would it be Britain? When we already established that they wouldn't have the capacity to do that. I don't know for sure, but I always did like the Egyptian revolt potentially turning into a modern state is always really interesting to me from a point of divergence wise. I always wanted to make a timeline like that. German idea, Algeria, Neo Vandalia. Yeah, I don't know about that too much, but Egypt replaces the Ottomans as France's Middle Eastern ally. Problem is that goes against like Napoleonic policy of the Ottomans. Like, maybe if the Ottomans were proven to be weak, they would go and try to prop up something here. But imagine you have a empire that's centered here that's fighting Russia. Why would you support an empire that's trying to defeat this so that they take this stuff like from here, but then Russia comes in here and takes all that? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like it's a good idea, and it suits like the policies of Napoleon III, and he's going to be ruling the country, but it doesn't make sense in the way that the alternate geopolitical situation is currently. Let's look at this map, though. I think that at this point, Russia would have this territory, and that would have also given them the ability to influence things here. And it's kind of like a breakthrough into the Balkans to then fight this. So I think that I'll be changing that. But yeah, I brought this up to show here, like, if France is trying to get this to fight this, why would they support this to go up there, right? But then again, we do kind of need to have Egypt somehow separating, but how, right? I'm not too certain about that yet. Algeria is the one colony of France would always have in their alternate history due to how long-standing interest it's been. I'd be interested to know about French interest in Algeria before the restoration of the Bourbons in France. So maybe they are involved here, but like especially if we have Britain falling apart, France would also potentially control. No, they wouldn't. The British would. I'm not too certain about what to do about this. This is a hard choice. One thing I was considering was having Britain fall to communism. Is that the communist symbol, or is the hammer here and the sickle like this? Yeah, that looks better. Having Britain be communist, maybe. Napoleonic Dutch kingdom wanting to form North Germany. Oh yeah, the Dutch could be involved in German nationalism. It makes a lot of sense because they'd be in the exact same boat as the Germans. They're dominated by France, Germanic style language. Yeah, maybe they are involved in like the German Confederation. Would the UK keep Dutch East India Company? Yes, they would. There'd be no way or reason to give it back to a Napoleonic satellite state. Communist Britain would be dope. I think so too, because then they can take the role of like the international arbiter. But then again, like a nationalist America Britain could look at the America falling into a civil war, and then do like a great reconquest. I think like I haven't seen a mod do that. Maybe Caesarreich will do that, but it's also a different idea I had. Louis, Napoleon's brother, when he was king of the Netherlands, was liked by the population. Maybe the Bonapartes could keep the Netherlands. Yeah, maybe. Best ideas here. Orleans in Quebec. Great Mexico. Egypt is a French ally. I don't really agree with that one. German Algeria, Neo-Vandalia. I like that idea, but it seems kind of odd. Napoleonic Australia and Bourbon China. I don't know about Bourbon China. Napoleonic Australia, maybe. I need to ask my Australian friends about that. I have heard about France having ambitions here, and especially if we have a Chartist rebellion here and France takes over this stuff, that could work. I'll remove the ideas and stuff here. Portuguese pink map would happen. Cape is British, but what about the Boer states? And then this is like here, maybe France shows up here and puts the Germans there. It's a meme. Communism exists in the same form. It does, and the reason why it does is it's a part of what makes this mod unique. Following the old way that things worked in Hoi 4, you actually have radical Republicans as a ideology. And it's like it's directly related to socialism. So I would say that republicanism without liberal Americans as well. Republicanism inherently is communist-y. So yeah, that's why we're keeping it like that. Possible History actually made a video about a Dutch formed North German Federation. I haven't seen it, and I will definitely be watching it. Red coat invasion will get a different meaning if it's a communist. Yeah. How about no communist Britain? Let's see. Brazil ruled by the Portuguese monarchy. Yes. With the Industrial Revolution going, probably communism still would exist. Yes. Unless we have British royalists to be somewhere, I'm saying no to communist Britain. The British royalists wouldn't exist anywhere else, I don't think. Maybe India is communist. I don't think India would even be British. And they wouldn't really have the... Well, maybe they would. I don't know. India is just a little different than China. And China has the communism. But one thing I think could be good is if we have... as we know... I don't know if everybody watching the stream knows this. We have a heavenly empire of China. I'm pretty sure that was supported by France in Napoleonic France. So we should probably have a heavenly kingdom. I think that's just a cool thing to have. Will France follow a civil war? Yes. We're gonna probably have a civil war. Probably. Who owns Libya? The pop is so low. Could even be Egyptian. It's kind of even already depicted that way. British who's control World War I, India, communist rise up to take over. Right. But would they even want to be communist? Like, I'm sure there'd be some, but what would that even look like? So the way that they currently have it here, why the hell is the Dutch East? Oh my God! I was just talking about all the reasons why we shouldn't have a Dutch East Indies, but look, the Dutch East Indies, puppet of the. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. Anyway, we have Crown Rule in India here, and then extended French colonies and Portuguese colonies, and even French Ceylon. Like, is this stuff that they acquired after World War I? Britain wouldn't be able to hold on to India. If Britain lost India, then they would lose their economic stability and they'd have to go communist. Sorry, just remember it, but that's just the only way that this would make sense. So maybe then we keep it this way. I don't know. Burma wouldn't exist. Empire of China, which might be like a Republican turned coup Empire of China. And Russia would still probably take the Pacific. I don't understand why they wouldn't. But let's go back to Photoshop. If we have France being pro-Napoleon, yeah, they'd be on the same side as Russia, so they wouldn't take that land, at least not yet. Egyptian East Indies, oh my God. Communist British Commonwealth, yeah, maybe. If we go to way, French Civil War, Lux Germania, but French tradition, yeah, in a way. High-ranking French official at the Foreign Ministry suggested a creation of the state Ukrainian Cossacks allied to France. Yes. And that's what would happen after World War I. Yeah, and even if it was a Napoleonic Empire thing, that could also happen too. Yeah, Britain controls Java during the Napoleonic Wars, against them keeping it if Napoleon wins the continent. Yeah, so that's something that we need to figure out. Like, there's no way that there's like two different big paths that we can take here. Britain remains the colonial, the naval people. They still mess with French ambitions to get out into the Atlantic. For that reason alone, it makes sense for them to take Algeria. It could also mean why they're supporting. They could do. Oh, that's actually brilliant. So they support the Ottomans, but then the French own the Suez, so then they break out into the Atlantic this way. Britain can't do anything about that at that point. French Pondicherry would still require this, but then with the Suez, it's really easy to go like this. It also opens the door for more French intervention into Asia. The French Suez is a must, I think. Would British Pacific Northwest still exist? No, they wouldn't. If the pod is before 1810, then Bernadotte should be replaced with someone else in Sweden if you want Sweden to not be neutral. The point of divergence is before 1810, but I don't know if it would influence how Sweden's monarchy ended up. But that is an interesting idea. Polish Gambia and Madagascar get seized by France after World War I. That is okay. So there is something here that sounds crazy, but there was a like Slovakian / Polish. I don't remember who. It was a Slavic guy who was trying to become king of Madagascar and then become a protectorate of a Slavic nation. So I actually kind of like this idea of having Poland own this, and then it goes to France. Maybe then there could be a Slavic minority rule in Madagascar path. Could be fun. We are having Bourbon / Orleanists exist in Quebec, but not as an independent state. They would live in exile in French Canada, and after the Civil War happens and French national separatists take over Canada, there could be a path or a guarantee that the Orleanists would rule. the monarchist system would be legitimized with the imperial presidency of the USA. They would have no reason to exile the French nobility. So after the Civil War in America starts, the French-Canadian tag would be led by or have a path to be ruled by Orleanists. So that's how I'm going to be representing that. French Patagonia, maybe. Slavic Rhodesia and Madagascar, yikes, but also true. Why does this feel like Lux Germania? I'm still considering your idea of having no one win World War One. Right now I'm trying to cover other things. Bernadotte was the guy who made the principle of neutrality. Remove him, it's less likely to become a thing. I see. So that would make sense why we'd want to have somebody else. Poland owning Madagascar is crazy. The French only took the island in the late 19th century. Technology became too much for the Malagasy to resist. France already had an interest. Yeah, it is kind of crazy. So maybe it's instead just like a niche path. Kurland, a Polish vassal, had tried to colonize Gambia in the 17th century. Maybe the Polish tried to colonize the region. I don't remember what the Gambia is exactly, but it could work. Russian Djibouti. They would not be able to do that because they would not be able to reach their... I don't think. It's a possibility. I like it, but I don't know. Small heavenly kingdom with Manchukuo as a Japanese protectorate, while Mongolia and Xinjiang are Russian protectorates. Maybe China can collapse with a major power supporting someone. I kind of want to see if there's like a heavenly kingdom that is like the whole thing. And then the fact that Manchuria exists here is something that Japan could capitalize on, then Russia capitalize on. There's a fight over here. They're fighting over this. Maybe, but then it's put on pause for World War One. Then the fact that these states would exist here, yeah, it would be Russia. That makes sense. Tibet, no. Have the Heavenly Kingdom here. Have them have a bunch of treaty ports because they're Christian and would be simping for that. Japan would take Taiwan. World War One, Japan takes this. World War Two, potentially, they go down here. But if it's a British colony and then we have the British falling, then what happens to this? Because this would all be British, right? A lot of things that we're trying to figure out here. Hold on, so Orleans could that be ultranationalist? Maybe. Makes sense because they would be allied with Poland, and then they would like potentially restore them in France. Yeah. Brazilian Empire controlled by the Habsburgs. Dom Pedro's wife was the oldest daughter of the last Holy Roman Emperor. I need to look into that. Would the U.S. colonize Africa? So in my Imperator Hamilton alternate history, they would be anti-slavery, so they could get colonies in Africa, but not for slavery reasons like Confederate states would. U.S. colonization in Africa would make for a good alternate myth to manifest destiny. Maybe, but then like, why? If they're going to be colonizing, why wouldn't they try to reach the Pacific, right? Like, I still see the merit of having a big Mexico, but I'm not entirely certain yet. This is just Lux Germania, but the pod makes it 100 times more annoying. Is it just Lux Germania? I actually failed to see how it is the same. Like, maybe if you look at the 1815 map, it looks like Lux Germania. But this like pre-World War One map makes a lot more sense to me. Would America still have a big civil war? Yes, that's the plan. Would Argentina, that the British succeeding taking, what, like the British take Argentina period? Maybe. Big Liberia? Potentially. Yeah, you know what? Maybe because America and the time period, there's more of a quote-unquote return to Africa movement, because it's like, oh, they're anti-slavery, but then there's still like white supremacists, right? So it's like, let's take all these people and put them somewhere else so that we can avoid ethnic tensions. Yeah, maybe. So we could actually have a big new Africa in Africa back to Africa, because even what's his name, the freer of the slaves, Abraham Lincoln, even he thought like it would be better for everybody if they were gone, just so that they weren't persecuted against. Like, he didn't think that would be possible for the South to reconstruct when they still resented their slaves, and because they convinced themselves that it was a good thing to do by insisting that they were inferior, right? Like, that's just how it worked. Their minds worked back then. I have no support for any ideology like that personally, but if we're going to be representing history, then it actually could be something that happened. American colonies, Nigeria would be a good spot. A lot of commercial interests. Yeah, makes sense. For North America, may take page of Pax Britannica has smelly bet that grows strength in the West. Maybe. Yeah. The South is more Republican compared to the North. Yeah. And the Hamilton suppressed that in this timeline. The British tried to invade Buenos Aires many times in the Napoleonic Wars. I see. So then maybe this is British? Like they just let out their anger on here? Yeah, makes sense. In fact, some ideology tells you how to... No, I know for sure what it is. It's communist. There's no way that Russia wouldn't be communist. Portugal's enemy of France. France could have deposed Dom Pedro and put Leopoldina as an impressive well, why wouldn't he just do that in Mexico, right? I don't know about that. French Patagonia. It makes sense if Britain took over Algeria, then France could try to counter that by doing the Patagonian Kingdom thing. Mexico could become a British ally to counter Napoleon. Yes, but then if the British are fighting the Americans and they fail, then what happens to Mexico? Monroe Doctrine wouldn't happen in the same way, I don't think. French Guiana, in our timeline, claimed up to the Amazon River until the year 1900. There, yeah. So maybe we do that. Russia still control Alaska? I think so. Just for the memes. Is Germany gonna have a civil war? Maybe. I was like initially like convinced that we should. I'm not as convinced anymore. I think that it could be bad if Germany has a civil war and then France does. I'm not too sure what to do with Germany yet. Especially like the idea of having France nobody win World War I is good in the sense that it would prevent Germany being completely dominated by France. So I don't know. I have to think about it still. Germany have a revolt to unite? Yeah, maybe. French Guiana was a prison colony. Oh, well then there you go. That's I guess where the Germans are going. For the crime of being German. And then they might want to expand their buffer with Brazil. Yeah, so that could work. And then didn't the Dutch own this? But then the British would own it. So then this is British. Then this is, but then Gran Colombia? No, Venezuela would exist. Maybe then they're French aligned. We could have ultra nationalism be more akin to integralism. Yeah, that is something would happen. I think. No name. Germans in South America. How ironic. Yeah. Where did the 1848 Germans that populated the Rust Belt go? I think they would still go to America. If France wins, why would they have a civil war? Because we need them to be weak. But then again, it's unlikely that they would have a civil war in the same way that in Lex Germania everything broke apart because of how unstable that union would be. So maybe we don't have a French Civil War. I'll put a question mark for this. So a timeline where France and Germany had a revolution and formed the USSR. That could be interesting, but not in this timeline, I don't think. Would it be possible to not have a World War I, like instead of 1914 beginning in the 20s? That's actually a good idea. One of the ideas I even want to suggest in my video is instead of having the time period be 1936, having the dynamic of this 1815 order being disrupted and then having everybody fight each other in 1850, that honestly might make a better Hoi 4 mod than a 1936 scenario, because you have all the dynamics happening in France. You have all the potential paths that you could do. You have German national unity happening. You have fluid diplomacy happening with a bunch of different people and everywhere else in the world. You have this actually could be a better mod than having it be 1936, which is crazy, but I still want to see if I can try to make a 1936 scenario. It could be that because there's so much to try to cover all in one go that we need to do 2 parts and only do a second part if there's enough likes, same sort of thing, but we only stop like halfway. Like we stop at the 1848. It's like, this could be a good mod, but if you want me to go further and try to go to 1936, I can try, but you can look at the stream and see how hard it was. The Bolsheviks were to represent urban workers. If Russia's going to be rural, I don't understand what you're saying in Flash Plays. Why don't we delay World War I up to 1936? Maybe we do that. Napoleon Victoria scenario fits Victoria 3 more. Yeah, maybe. That's also valid. But then again, I'm making a LoreGrave on the Hoi 4 mod scenario of a Napoleonic victory. So I don't know. How's Italy? Fascist, Mussolini, or communist? I'm not sure yet. Delaying World War I to 1936 would probably stunt military technology. Yeah, and then at that point, might as well just make it about World War I. Like, all the solutions point to not making it about a Hoi 4 mod at all. And it's interesting how everybody comes into the stream. They're like, yeah, let's do 1936. And then people are like, wait, no, it doesn't make any sense. Let's go back. This is kind of the exact determination I had. And it's interesting seeing how talking about it ended up having people make the same conclusion as me. We can have a Mexican empire under Ibertide first, the length of Britain. Yes. Social revolutionaries represented the rural population more than the Bolsheviks. Okay, so I think that's a debatable question, assertion. I'm not saying that you're right or wrong. I don't know enough about history, but I do know what the Stalinists say about that kind of position. But regardless, if Russia's gonna be more rural dominant, they could be edge developed. It could be a different. It could be ultra. What is it called? Is it ultra left? It could, regardless, it could be a different kind of communism than Lenin. Yeah, I'm not denying that. It could very well be that way. The problem in 1936 means you have to imply something more than an interwar. Yeah, if it's 2016 and we all had trash taste of Hoi format then, but trying to make it work. Yeah. Only way to move is not to play. Yeah. There are some timelines that can't really make good timeline things here, but I don't know. There's enough to talk about when it comes to dynamics of America and Europe that I would be willing to make a video on that, but I'm probably not going to define anything in Asia besides Japan taking over the Philippines, because USA doesn't get to the Pacific, because the Mexicans are allied with the British. By the time it's World War I, they wouldn't be able to make any influence here. But then again, isn't one of the reasons why Japan modernized is that the Americans forced them to be open? But even if this Hamilton America had the same territory as our America, and they came to Japan, would they really be an open door policy? Probably not. Would France be trying to get Japan to be a regional power? Who would ever believe that Japan would be a regional power? Because the only time that the Europeans really recognize Japan is after they beat Russia. But would they even beat Russia? Would there even be a fight over this stuff? Heavenly Kingdom might be a good way for European people to be involved. Yeah, I think that, okay, we're not having a Chartist Britain, because removing Britain as a naval power that influences Asia is way too much of a departure. And if anything, it might suck that they lost North America, but now Britain can only focus on Asia. So they had this is their entire empire, and they just keep doing it like this. And then that way, the British Indonesia is solidified, British India is solidified, British Australia, New Zealand is solidified. They have a very, very powerful presence here. France in 1850 gives the Portuguese back so that they have potentially an alliance, which then means that there's a rising influence of France in here to try to prevent Britain, to like mess with Britain. They also try to get Suez to break through away from the Atlantic to just go straight into the Red Sea. The British and French have a fight here. Then Britain would fall, but then what happens here, right? Like maybe it does go back to the Dutch, and the Dutch are Napoleon. So like this is Napoleon indirectly controlling here, but then there'd be an Indonesian revolt potentially funded by Japan, who would start to work against France. What you said about my map during that one live stream. Crazy idea. The mod should be Tino but more French. Yes, I actually think that's a good idea. Unites Empire of the Latins under the Napoleonic. I don't understand what that is. The problem with such an early pods like what if Napoleon won is that the dynamic that people generally want to see is the dynamic of the aftermath. So scenarios are sometimes forced into unnatural stasis. Yes, I agree. Big Sweden as the United Kingdom of Sweden, Norway, since the UK is a Commonwealth. But the only way that Sweden got Norway is when they defected away from Napoleon. So it would be Dutch, and it would be the Danish and Norwegians that still exist. But if we have a Sweden that maybe is trying to go against Russia for Finland, maybe Denmark and Norway go in on Sweden, and then they form Scandinavia. It's just a rough idea. Maybe Russo-Mexican war over Fort Ross. You know, that could be fun. Because I know that Russians had a spot here. But that's also kind of like saying, it's like, what if Sweden and the USA had a war over that one little fort that they had in America? Like, I don't know. This is more like a Cold War mob with so many proxy conflicts. Yeah. Even if Russia takes over Korea, I think that the Japanese shogunate really wouldn't care. For Russia to force Japan out of isolation is required maritime presence in the Pacific. Yes. But then, I don't know, having a regional Asian power messing with Europeans is also really good for balance reasons. But then why would Japan ever stop being isolationist? Why would France ever want to be involved in Japan? Maybe it is that, like, because Britain has so much presence here, France modernizes Japan to be a regional thing. I don't know, though. It's really rough. Hold on. This one's Heavenly Kingdom takes that role. You know what? Maybe we should do that. Because then it's like, why would the Heavenly Kingdom be that? The Heavenly Kingdom would be that because they would be Christian, but it's not necessarily that Christians are stronger. It's like, because they're Christian, they're more Europhilic, which means that they modernize. So I like that idea. And then instead of the let's do that. Stand to the work. Hold on. For the people who are just tuning in, which is interesting how that works, I'm gonna put this up for you to look at. I'll try to keep the frame on this while we talk about Asia. So this is all in like 1790, but we're talking about like 1850 to 1910 to 1936. So having a Heavenly Kingdom revolt at around the same time as our history, having them reach out to several different powers of Europeans to try to modernize, maybe it's another Franco-British conflict where they don't like the British for selling opium, so then the French get involved there. That could work. And the French are aligned with China. Japan would still be isolationist. Franco-Japanese alliance is British-Japanese. I don't know. Like, Japan's still under the Tokugawa shogunate. That might be actually what happens. Just gonna throw ideas in the air, see if something hits. Great Columbia under Bolivar aligned with Napoleon. He wouldn't be aligned with Napoleon because he hated Napoleon for becoming a monarch. I know that monarchists claim that if Bolivar had decided to take the role of a monarch, then Grand Columbia wouldn't have fragmented, but I don't believe that's true. Heavenly Kingdom wasn't supported by the Europeans as is sometimes depicted. Yes, but if we're going to try to find a way for a regional Asian power to exist that's modernizing, we kind of need it to be that way, I think. Mess with the status quo of favorable commerce. Yeah, but I think in this case it would be the British trying to get favorable commerce. Well, another thing too is like favorable commerce. That was something that America had sort of implanted there because they wanted to do the open door policy to be like open door policy to get everybody involved in free trade instead of partitioning China. So maybe a partition in China still happens. Like maybe it's Heavenly Kingdom, but then because Heavenly Kingdom isn't really going to last, it's still a Kuomintang revolution, which would modernize China, and it's a republic. Because I know that Sun Yat-sen was Christian, so yeah, maybe we do that. I don't know. Maybe Russia annex the northern Japanese island. Yes, that's a good idea actually. Having Russia force Japan out of isolationism in that way could be good, and then that would mean that Japan is anti-Napoleon, but maybe they just can't get involved. I don't know. That's a good idea though. We do maybe part 1 should be a critique of the backstory and part 2 should be suggested changes. Yeah, honestly, like maybe there's a video I'm working on right now that's kind of like, it's kind of like a LoreGrave because I talk about Victoria at an Alamo, but it's more like this is why if you're going to try to make a Hoi 4 mod, you need to actually have a good structure, and I think this is another good example. Like, you can't just think of any idea. Like, should it really be a Hoi 4 mod? It's probably the title. It's like, yeah, maybe it shouldn't be. But then again, like, I don't know, I still want to try to make this work because there's a lot of interesting things that can happen with the Hoi 4 aspect. So probably I'll try to still make this a standalone on my own. Why not have a new dynasty in Brazil? I don't know, man. Just because then having Brazil have Portugal makes things more interesting. I don't know. Yeah, Japan with this Zakalan makes sense. Yeah. Well, kind of hit my limit here. Shout out again to the developers of Après, nous, déluge. But I do really want them to consider removing anti-terms of service stuff in their focus tree. So let's just not. Let's just agree on that. This is a mod that's currently being updated and has good focus trees if you want to play this original mod. I'll still try to do my best to provide my own take on the scenario. I think that I have a link to their Discord in the description of this live stream, so you can see it there. But yeah, thank you all for your amazing suggestions, and I'll be sure to try to incorporate as many of them as I can into the LoreGrave, which I hope will come out soon. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in, talking. It's nice to stream with you guys and